Hello everyone and welcome to UzReport World News Broadcasting with me, Davron Jumaev. Uzbekistan will allocate some $5.5 billion to support youth and promote public health. This was stated during a meeting chaired by President Shavkat Mirziyoyev on February 10. See the details in our next story.
Biz xalqimiz tomonidan bildirilgan fikr va taklif istaklarini inobatga olib 2021-yilni
We will achieve our goals despite the ongoing pandemic in a time of growing crisis. No matter how difficult it may be, we must provide jobs for 500,000 youth, employ 200,000 women. Most importantly, we have to bring 300,000 citizens out of poverty. If the system of work is established properly, if the state bodies fulfill their duties diligently and wisely, we no doubt can make drastic changes, said Mirziyoyev. He outlined plans to improve roads, water and electricity supply in districts. Even the most remote villages should have access to medicine and education. There are many leaders, many responsible ones, but there are no people who deal with the concerns of ordinary people. All solutions are feasible. But the most important shortcoming is that there is no control. Ministers, mayors do not give their best, added Mirziyoyev. He also emphasized the importance of effective distribution of $570 million of credit funds allocated to support family businesses. Some 226 large industrial and infrastructure facilities worth $23 billion are set to be launched by the end of this year. The government also plans to improve infrastructure in all regions of the country. It also plans to help the tourism sector to reload. Around 25% of the cost of air tickets is to be reimbursed to air carriers. A new mechanism is to help increase the number of foreign tourists to 1.7 million by the end of 2021. Orders were announced to reclaim 320,000 hectares of land, reconstruct pumping stations, and introduce water-saving technologies. In order to ensure food security, a task was given to increase the production of meat and dairy products, eggs and fish, and to launch 1,500 new projects worth $570 million. Uzbekistan will have vaccinated 20% of the population from the COVID-19 before 2022. This was stated by the Deputy Chief of Sanitary, Epidemiological Welfare and Public Health Authority, Boturjon Kurbanov. According to our information, the coronavirus vaccine will be delivered in March this year. First of all, persons over 85 years old will be vaccinated, then persons aged 75 to 84 years, and the next stage, persons aged 65 to 75 years. Thus, the vaccination process will gradually rejuvenate. Another category that will receive the vaccine in the first place is the medical staff. They work directly with sick people. We all know that during the pandemic, many of our doctors died as a result of infection, he said. According to Boturjon Kurbanov, the most effective way to combat this disease is the public vaccination. President Shavkat Mirziyoyev urged to accelerate vaccination against coronavirus during a video conference call on Wednesday. He ordered that the head of the Sanitary, Epidemiological Welfare and the head of Public Health Service should determine the category of the population that needs to be vaccinated first and form an electronic list. He also mentioned the necessity to prepare 3,000 vaccination units in family polyclinics and rural medical centers, as well as to create 800 mobile teams that will vaccinate the population. Leading Russian telecoms company Megafon has set up a joint venture digital holding with Uzbekistan's biggest mobile phone company Ucell and will invest $100 million to enter the country's telecoms market, the company said on Tuesday. Megafon said it intends to become the technological leader of the largest telecommunications market in Central Asia. The creation of a leading player in the digital services market in Uzbekistan is in line with the strategy of both Megafon and USM Telecom, which is building a technology leader in the CIS and Eastern Europe. We are confident that the long-term expertise in the implementation of digital projects, which Megafon, CRPT and ICS Holding have, will help develop the largest industry player in Uzbekistan, says Ivan Streshinsky, General Director of USM Telecom, in a statement. Megafon is 100% owned by USM Telecom and invested investment vehicle belonging to Uzbek-born Russian metals and tech tycoon Alisher Usmanov. Previously, Megaphone was publicly traded, but Usmanov took the company private in 2019 with $1.3 billion buyout offer taken up by investors. One of Russia's big four telecoms operators, Megaphone, is now moving into Central Asia via a joint venture with the country's state-owned telecommunications market leader Ucell, as well as other local USM assets that include CRPT Turon and ISC Holding Uzbekistan. From the point of view of consumption of digital services, Uzbekistan is one of the most promising markets in the CIS, which over the past 10 years has shown more than threefold growth in cellular subscribers, but at the same time, it is still far from saturation. We are not planning major structural changes within Ucell in 2021, but rather focus on finding synergies and implementing best practices in Ucell to grow its business, said Gevorg Vermishan, Megaphone CEO, in a press release. The government of Uzbekistan's Agency for the State Assets Management will contribute its 100% stake in Ucell to the joint venture. The Russian side will invest $100 million to build up the digital holding joint venture into the country's biggest telecoms player. Uzbek ambassador in South Korea met with the leadership of Hanshin Engineering and Construction Co. Limited. Hanshin Engineering has announced its intention to invest in a number of major projects in Uzbekistan. In particular, it plans to build Kokand city in the Fergana region, as well as an international level $800 million golf club in the Samarkand region. Together with the Ministry of Construction of Uzbekistan, the company is also working on the creation of a unique in the region joint design institute. The scope of activities, the main financial and economic indicators are yet to be determined. 360 packages of biological active additives of two types were found by the employees of the Tashkent Regional Customs Administration at the border post car inspection. $14,000 worth dietary supplements were neither specified in the customs declaration nor in the cargo accompanying documents.
In another case, Tashkent Regional Customs Administration stopped the attempts of illegal trade of narcotic drugs. The operational event was held in Akhangaran district together with employees of the Tashkent Regional Department of the State Security Service. In accordance with the established procedure, the citizen Isakov, who was moving around the territory of the district, was searched. He was carrying hashish weighing 125 grams, which has a specific smell. A similar offense was detected in the Al-Malik district of the Tashkent region. During an attempt to illegally sell a drug that resembles hashish, wrapped in a black plastic bag in the form of 3 rolled balls in the amount of $113.89, a citizen Ergashev was detained. After that, the temporary housing of Ergashev was examined. Substances with a specifically pungent smell, similar to the drug hashish, were found here, wrapped in 14 plastic bags. According to the expert opinion, the total weight of hashish was 13.2 grams.
All European markets will soon be receiving the Uzbek leather products, as the Italian company Antonio Couture has been granted the right to export leather products manufactured by Uzbek company Ungrand Charm Invest. As the outcome of a video conference between Uzbek and Italian companies engaged in leather processing and production of leather shoes, an agreement was signed on February 8. It says the export of Uzbek products to Italian and European markets will begin in March-April 2021. Uzbekistan has issued a resolution to create Sudochye Akpetki State Reserve of Wetland in the seabed of dried Aral Sea in the northwest of the country to preserve rare species of animals. The state reserve will be on an area of 280,500 hectares of wetlands, and the environmental authorities were tasked to add the Sudochye Lake to the list of the Ramsar Convention by the end of the year.
The purpose of the sanctuary is to reproduce coastal landscapes, canals, waterfowl populations, rare and endangered species of fish, birds, and mammals. The State Committee for Ecology was instructed to develop proposals for the inclusion of Sudochye Lake in the list of wetlands of global importance protected by the Ramsar Convention by the end of 2021 and submit them for government review. In September 2020, the Tudakal and Kuyumazar reservoirs in the Navai province were included in the Ramsar Convention. operation. It also includes Denisko Lake and the Idara Arnasa Lake system. Following the drying of the Aral Sea in the last century, Sudechi Lake has become an important spot for more than 230 bird species, including pink flamingos. According to the environmental experts, Uzbekistan currently has 6 state reserves and dozens of biosphere and wildlife reserves.
The CDC released new guidance Wednesday on mask wearing, telling Americans 2 masks are better than 1, and if you only wear one, make sure it has a tight fit. Researchers at the CDC in January conducted experiments to see how well wearing a cloth mask over a surgical mask and knotting the ear loops of a surgical mask and then tucking the excess material close to the face protects against COVID-19. They found that both of these methods helped reduce the exposure to potentially infected aerosols by more than 90% in laboratory simulations. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky.
New data released from CDC today underscore the importance of wearing a mask correctly and making sure it fits closely and snugly over your nose and mouth.
Nationwide, the daily tallies of new cases and hospitalizations from COVID-19 have been dropping steadily in recent weeks. But public health experts fear that gatherings for Super Bowl celebrations on Sunday, as well as the arrival of new highly contagious variants of the virus, may lead to another surge in cases before most are vaccinated, telling Americans to continue to rely on masks and to, if possible, as the first line of defense.
Most of the public does not know how close these rioters came to you.
Never-before-seen security footage from the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol was presented to the 100 senators acting as jurors in Donald Trump's impeachment trial on Wednesday, showing themselves fleeing from rioters as House Impeachment Manager Eric Swalwell set the scene.
As you were moving through that hallway, I paced it off. You were just 58 steps away from where the mob was amassing and where police were rushing to stop them.
The new security video showed Senator Mitt Romney running to safety after the mob breached the Capitol, thanks to a last-minute warning from a Capitol police officer. Another new clip showed former Vice President Mike Pence being quickly ushered to safety, which was presented by impeachment manager Stacey Plaskett.
During the course of the attack, the Vice President never left the Capitol, remained locked down with his family inside the building. Remember that as you think about these images and the sounds of the attack.
The Democratic House managers had the floor on day 2 of Trump's second impeachment trial, presenting more graphic video of the siege, which they warned would be disturbing to children watching the trial, and chilling audio of Capitol Police overwhelmed by a mob of Trump supporters.
We lost the line! We lost the line! All MPD, pull back! All MPD, pull back up to the upper deck! All MPD, pull back to the upper deck! ASAP!
Lead impeachment manager Jamie Raskin argued that Trump not only planted the seeds for the Capitol riot with false claims of widespread voter fraud, but that he also abdicated his duty to keep Americans safe.
Donald Trump surrendered his role as commander-in-chief and became the inciter-in-chief.
House Manager Ted Lieu said after Trump's legal efforts to overturn the election and the courts failed, insurrection was the only other option.
President Donald J. Trump ran out of nonviolent options to maintain power.
Democrats also tried to tie Trump to the planning of the events on January 6th, claiming that the Save America rally did not have a permit to march to the Capitol until Trump stepped in.
It was not until after President Trump and his team became involved in the planning that the march from the ellipse to the Capitol came about, in direct contravention of the original permit.
And in an emotional plea to the senators, impeachment manager Madeleine Dean said they had an obligation to hold Trump accountable.
This attack never would have happened but for Donald Trump. For the first time in more than 200 years, the seat of our government was ransacked on our watch.
Trump's lawyers, who will have 16 hours to deliver their side of the argument after the House managers are finished, are expected to argue that the former president's rhetoric is protected by the First Amendment's guarantee of free speech, and that the individuals who breached the Capitol were responsible for their own criminal behavior.
Prosecutors in Georgia have launched a criminal probe into Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the state's 2020 presidential results. The Fulton County prosecutor, Democrat Fani Willis, whose district covers the state capital, Atlanta, sent letters to Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, the state's Attorney General, and other officials that her office was looking into a number of possible crimes, including solicitation of election fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. The prosecutor asked the officials to preserve records that may be, quote, evidence of attempts to influence the actions of persons who are administering that election. The investigation by Willis is the most serious probe facing Trump in Georgia, connected to a January 2nd phone call pressuring Raffensperger to overturn the state's election results based on unfounded voter fraud claims. Trump told Raffensperger, quote, I just want to find 11,780 votes, adding, quote, there's nothing wrong with saying, that you've recalculated. The Fulton County prosecutor's probe comes 2 days after Raffensperger's office opened its own investigation into Trump's phone call. Representatives for the county prosecutor and for Trump did not respond to requests for comment. Donald Trump had refused to accept Democratic President Joe Biden's victory in Georgia and other swing states, falsely alleging that Georgia's election results were tainted by fraud, claims forcefully refuted by that state's Republican leaders.
Iran has started producing uranium metal, a material that could be used to make the core of an atomic weapon. That's according to a report from the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency on Wednesday. The UN atomic watchdog confirmed about 3 grams of the uranium metal was produced at Iran's fuel plate fabrication plant in Esfahan. Earlier this week, reports confirmed that the metal material was not enriched. According to the IAEA report and another seen by Reuters, Tehran plans to enrich the uranium metal to 20%, short of the 90% considered weapons grade. Last year, Iran passed a law calling for the opening of a uranium metal plant for nuclear weapon research, in response to the killing of its top nuclear scientist in November. This is the latest breach of its nuclear deal with major powers, a pattern in recent months that's made it more difficult for the U.S. to re-enter the agreement. Iran began breaching the deal in 2019 when former President Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. from the agreement and reimposed sanctions on Tehran. The 2015 deal was to limit the amount of nuclear material Iran could produce at one time. Instead of its usual 2 to 3 months timeline, the agreement ensures it would take at least a year to create an atomic weapon. Tehran has always denied pursuing nuclear weapons and says its program is for peaceful purposes.
Europe's oldest person is blind, a Catholic nun, and now also a survivor of coronavirus. The French nun, Sister André, will celebrate her 117th birthday this week.
Est-ce que ça vous a inquiété à un moment?
That's the spokesman for her care home in southern France asking her if she was scared. Her reply was that she didn't even know she had the virus. And when she learned she did, she wasn't afraid of dying.
J'ai pas eu peur parce que j'avais pas peur de mourir.
Lucille Rondon took the name of Sister André when she joined a Catholic charitable order in 1944. David Tavella, the spokesman, says despite the virus, there'll still be birthday celebrations.
L'anniversaire de Sœur André arrive.
Sister André's birthday is taking place at a good time. It couldn't be a better time, because it will mark the beginning of big festivities that will be organised around the relaxed restrictions. Our residents will be able to get out of their rooms, eat together, participate in activities. And yes, Sister André's birthday takes place just as this is happening, and this will allow us to bring everyone together once again. And we owe this to our eldest resident. It's very touching and relieving for the residents, for the families, and for the care workers.
The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq drifted slightly lower in a choppy session Wednesday. Materials and energy shares lifted the Dow, while a big slide in Tesla and declines in Amazon and Apple pulled the Nasdaq down. Just as on Tuesday, the indexes made minor moves. The Dow rose 0.1%, but the S&P 500 finished flat, and the Nasdaq edged down 0.25%. Gerber Kawasaki CEO Ross Gerber said the markets need a new shot of adrenaline.
If you look at today's trading, I wouldn't take much out of it. Is that the market's moved up a lot. There's some dissonance here with the data between what's happening with earnings and what's happening in Congress. And so we need a new catalyst to move higher.
Cannabis stocks rose after posts touting pot stocks as the next GameStop spread throughout the Wall Street Bets forum on Reddit. Tilray skyrocketed more than 50%. Aurora Cannabis jumped 21%. Shares of Lyft got a lift. The ride-sharing company says more cost cuts and a rebound in demand in the second quarter should help it knock out a profit by the third quarter of this year. Investors heard from its arch-rival Uber after the bell. Quarterly revenue at its ride-hail and delivery businesses rose. The company said it's on track to produce an adjusted profit by year-end. But shares fell.
These were the top headlines for today. Stay safe and goodbye.